Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, September 19th, 2024, and today I'm coming with you with my third upload of today, as the North Carolina GOP comes in at a complete and total collapse in the gubernatorial election, far more than anyone could have ever anticipated in this battleground state. Now, I've made multiple videos before talking about the collapse of the North Carolina GOP in reference to this specific candidate in particular, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who's been the Republican nominee for governor here for months now, who has had numerous scandals being really released and ultimately have plagued his campaign since his entrance into this gubernatorial race. Now we are starting to see, as of today, 2 p.m., CNN released massive research that they have done and conducted and released in a journalistic standard that shows practically the end of Mark Robinson's political future, with far many scandals coming out at this point, honestly, at my end, showing that this race is guaranteed for the Democratic Party. And Republicans were really at a bad place before. I want us to understand that coming into today's scandals and set of things that are likely going to be traveling all across the state of North Carolina over the next 2.5 months, or roughly, actually 2 months here, less than 2 months. I'm stuck back around the August timeframe. We have less than 2 months to go. He's already down roughly 9 points across the state of North Carolina. This is a state that Trump won twice. Democrats haven't won since Obama won here in 2008. And so this race being a 9-point advantage for the Democratic Party already is quite substantive and really does matter in understanding North Carolina in broad strokes. But when it comes down to Mark Robinson and the scandals that we saw today, the headline speaks for himself. The headline speaks for itself, rather, in really capturing a lot of the negative press that he is going to receive as a result of some of these comments that he has made. Now, CNN actually held back. They note in their article that they, in fact, are not going to be continuing to cover some of the comments that he has made. But he speaks of things that are quite extreme for a candidate running for governor. On one end of this forum, he speaks about infidelity with his wife's sister, saying that he routinely does things with his wife's sister week after week after week. On the other end, he proclaims himself this exact quote. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it out loud because I don't want this to end up messing up, any type of conversation around it or anything that could potentially censor the video. But what I do want us to understand is that some of the things that Mark Robinson has said and done cannot be said on this channel or anywhere for that matter, because they are so exceptionally extreme. This has ended Mark Robinson's campaign. But one thing that I think the Democratic Party has really tried to hone in on and will likely hone in on over the next 47 days in this battleground state is not necessarily just that Josh Stein should be the next governor of the state. It's that Kamala Harris should be the next president of the United States because of things like this, where Donald Trump so closely associated himself with Mark Robinson, held multiple joint rallies for him, endorsed him out the get-go in the North Carolina governor's race, despite many warning signs earlier on in his candidacy. I think very clearly about the 2020 election scandals that came out when he was running for lieutenant governor. That wasn't as high profile and received very little recognition because it was a governor's race, a lieutenant governor's race, that nobody focused and also cared about. North Carolina's down-ballot races was far better for Republicans than Donald Trump's top ticket race. Mark Robinson was one of those races that didn't receive national headlines, that didn't receive local headlines, and then again, nobody was really paying attention to. But his comments here were very, very extreme. He made comments that are being summed up as anti-gay and transphobic, as Holocaust denial, anti-Semitic remarks, his, no tolerance for abortion. No circumstances does he permit abortion. He has said all these things. He recently got exposed the day after he won his primary that he believes we should go back in time to when women did not have the right to vote. Mark Robinson has done some extreme things. From a nonpartisan standpoint, anybody would call it heinous. This is not becoming of a governor of any of these great 50 states, right? That is not where we are as a nation, and it certainly is not where we are anywhere. And I think Mark Robinson and the many things that he has done, I think what we have come to understand is that this is something that will tank his candidacy far more than he already has. But the implications aren't, again, contained to the governor's race. It isn't just Donald Trump Jr. saying big endorsement that, Mark Robinson endorsed Donald Trump for president. It's a lot of things. When Donald Trump said that Mark Robinson was Martin Luther King on steroids, people brought it up. We can see here that Kamala HQ, the social media wing and rapid response wing of the party, or of the candidate, right, uses this. But people didn't really talk about this much. I mean, it was extreme, but it wasn't as at the forefront of our minds like it is today. He even says that that Mark Robinson is better than Martin Luther King Jr. He says very extreme things. You can take a look too. When it comes down to some of the things that he is just thumbsing up, these things matter in electoral politics, right? These things matter. You can see that also he's refusing to drop out of the race because he's saying what? That this simply didn't happen. But we know that it happened, and everybody knows that it happens, and that's why it's a really difficult position for Mark Robinson and the Republican Party at large. Because of the close association with Donald Trump, dropping out of the race would be an admission of guilt. Staying in the race does, in fact, drop the chances in drop the chances of Donald Trump winning the state at large, right? What we know is that while there may not be a tremendous up ballot effect or, people riding the coattails of down ballot races, there absolutely will be a lot of questioning, a lot of thoughts that voters on the swing, on the fence will have. Why was Donald Trump so close with Mark Robinson? Why is it that Donald Trump was proud to receive his endorsement? Why is it that Donald Trump campaigned with him in multiple instances? Why is it that Donald Trump is someone who can be found in multiple photos with Mark Robinson? And why did he say these things that likely would agitate any swing voter who looks at these things objectively and says, this is not somebody I want for governor or anywhere near someone who might be in the Oval Office? This scandal likely has dropped the Republican Party's chances of winning North Carolina in the governorship tremendously, as well as the presidential election. This is really, really damaging, and I don't think we've quite seen the extent at which it is damaging as well. All of these things that have come out, Mark Robinson says, it's not me. I'm not dropping out of the race. I am vowing to stay in this race. Well, here's the catcher. This isn't a Joe Biden situation where you can vow to stay in the race and decide to drop out later. The declaration period at which you would drop out of a race in time for you to replace a candidate, guess what? It's today. And part of me thinks that there was an intentionality behind the release of this article today. That maybe there are some actors out there on the Republican side. I know that might seem weird, but I'm going to say it. On the Republican side, who might be looking at this and saying, holy crap, he cannot be our next governor. He cannot be the Republican nominee for governor. We need to push him out, and today's the day to do it. If there was any day for him to drop out, it would have to be today because he would be given the opportunity to do such a thing. But he's doubling down. The North Carolina GOP is going through the pathway. Some representatives, in fact, a sitting U.S. rep from North Carolina says, with AI and everything, I don't know if this is real. You know damn well that this is real. But you want to separate it from Mark Robinson because you know how unelectable some of these things he has said and done are for your party. I encourage you, if you have the mental bandwidth, to look at some of the things that Mark Robinson has said on these sites, supposedly said. I would encourage you to look. This is where he is, right? This is what we find. This is his @ This is the association with Mark Robinson. I want you to look because what you will find are an array of posts that is just one of them out of potentially hundreds at this point. Just one of them that is supposedly attributed to him was just plastered up on a billboard or put up on a TV ad and read verbatim. You would know his candidacy, his electoral career, his political career will end as lieutenant governor and be nothing more. This election will be turning a page, as Kamala Harris says, turning a page on Mark Robinson. The question is, does that bring both pages across the end to defeat Donald Trump on the presidential, as well as Mark Robinson in the gubernatorial? And it isn't just me who's saying that his political career is practically dead. I mean, we can see it too. In terms of the electoral ratings, we have now seen changes being made as of today. Larry Sabato's crystal ball, what do they say? That it's a likely Democratic seat. What do they have it as before? Lean Dem. Some of these races here, inside elections, has it at tilt Dem. C-Analysis had it at tilt Dem. These aren't the characterizations of a map here that could be compared to a safe Dem characterization or a likely Dem characterization, but it is true. This scandal has completely changed the trajectory of the race, and I will expect to see tomorrow, as many of these firms come together, when the Cook Political Report meets tomorrow in Washington, D.C., when Inside Elections meets together, whenever they pop on their Zooms or they get in person and make a decision collectively, all of these organizations, I fully expect in the same way Elections Daily did, Larry Sabato's crystal ball did, get together, and they make a decision. And more than likely, they will all shift this race into at least a likely Dem characterization. And again, the pundits can say one thing. I can say one thing. The betting markets concur with our opinion here. Feels like we're in the majority opinion on the United States Supreme Court. But a 92% chance for the North Carolina governor's race to go to the Democrats here. Where was it? Back in July? Back around the time that Donald Trump saw an assassination attempt against his life? Well, guess. We saw just a 60% chance for Democrats. In fact, a low point during the summer of 58% at winning the North Carolina governor election. Again, looking at it today, it's so massive. Republicans are now in the single digits in terms of the odds and chances at victory here. Everybody knows the Republican Party is done. And so what might this look like in a battleground state, right? What we have come to know is that practically nothing can make battleground states anything more than 2 or 3 points in favor of one political party over the other. But we did in fact see something like this in Pennsylvania in 2022, when Josh Shapiro defeated Doug Mastriano by 15 points. Now, you might be wondering why this is. If you weren't watching politics closely, I'll give you the quick TLDR. Josh Shapiro was the attorney general who won his election in 2020 by a narrow margin. It was a margin that was impressive, and he was the most voted for Democrat in Pennsylvania history by raw vote number. But it was a minuscule margin in comparison to his gubernatorial bid. He announced he was running for governor. Republicans wanted somebody strong. They thought of people across the state. But Doug Mastriano really shined. Why? One, he received the endorsement from Donald Trump, the same way Mark Robinson did. Number two, he captivated the MAGA base. He didn't win a majority of the Republican primary vote. He won with a plurality, less than 50% across the state. Why was he so extreme? Well, he made a number of comments very similar to that of Mark Robinson, but he also attended the January 6th insurrection. He was an insurrectionist. That was how he was brandished from the beginning. It made him popular amongst the MAGA base, but very unpopular amongst swing voters. And he just couldn't get back to being in a legitimate place. He just couldn't get back to being in a position where he was ever taken seriously. And so what happened? Months before the election, we saw the National Republican Governors Association saying we will not fund this race. Whenever questioned about it, they answered with, we only fund races that are winnable. Think about that for a moment. This is Pennsylvania, a state that Democrats won in 2020 by 1.2%, and a state Trump won in 2016, and the Republican response in what was meant to be, and at the time, was perceived and understood as a red wave year, as Republicans winning the national popular vote for the first time in 5 years. Seen as Republicans flipping back the House for the first time in 4 years. Seeing Republicans flip back the Senate from 2020 to 2022. We were fully expecting Republicans to really do well, and so were Republicans. But for Pennsylvania, the answer was, we only fund races that are winnable. Expect the same treatment to come down to the state of North Carolina. The result here you will see on election night is one that the Democratic Party will likely cherish for a long time, because it's become something that previously was much more rare, but now Democrats are in a position where it has become more routine for Republicans to nominate candidates that do not do well in the general election because they appeal to a minute portion of the base that is inspired to vote in primaries, but will likely lose the general election. That was Doug Mastriano. And 2022, that wasn't the only actor we saw. In Nevada, Adam Laxalt was that person. In Arizona, Blake Masters was that person. In Georgia, Herschel Walker was that person. In Pennsylvania, Dr. Oz was that person. In the governor races, it was Kari Lake in Arizona. It was Derek Schmidt in Kansas. It was certainly Paul LePage in Maine. It was Tudor Dixon in the state of Michigan. It was all of these candidates across the country. Doug Mastriano, I already mentioned. It was Tim Michels in Wisconsin. These candidates do not do well, despite the endorsement from Donald Trump and the endorsement that Donald Trump then again received when he was running for governor, that when Mark Robinson was running for governor. This guy here has completely tanked the Republican Party's chances at winning the governorship and likely did tremendous damage to Donald Trump being able to win in this state. Because when it comes down to an up-ballot race, Donald Trump might have the narrow upper hand here of 0.1%. But it very well could be short-lived if voters are enthusiastic and excited to vote for Josh Stein to reject Mark Robinson as a candidate. Because 8-9 times out of 10, if someone's getting out to vote for Josh Stein, they likely are voting for Kamala Harris too. And that could be tremendously damaging to the Donald Trump campaign if there are voters out there that say, hey, I might not have been able to vote because I didn't make a decision between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. But Mark Robinson is so insane, and Donald Trump, being someone who actively campaigned with him, was appreciative to the fullest extent of his endorsement and endorsed him in return in this election cycle. Something I would worry about if I was Team Trump, and something I would think about if I was looking at the way at which Kamala Harris can win North Carolina. It seems like the cards are really falling into place very perfectly for Vice President Harris in the battleground state of North Carolina. And I'm telling you now what I thought before. The odds of candidate Kamala Harris winning in North Carolina have gone up quite tremendously, and it is a locked, safe Democrat done deal for Josh Stein to win the governorship in North Carolina. Republicans truly F this up. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.